Hello, teacher. I am Hoàng Nguyễn. Today is Wednesday, the 16th of March, 2022. This is exercise WH question. Whose plus noun you say to you? Whose babies do you take care of? My babies. Whose bed do you use? My sister's bed. Whose car do you take? My mother's car. Whose car do you drive? Mary's car. Whose car do you wash? Her car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Here's the chocolate. Whose contract do you revise their contract? Whose email do you receive? My boss's email. Whose files do you access? Obama's files. Whose invitation do you accept? Shay's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? Here's the babies. Whose bed do you use? My nephew's bed. Whose car do you take? My boyfriend's car. Whose car do you drive? The chef's car. Whose car do you wash? The president's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Pepper's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? My company's contract. Whose email do you receive? My team leader's email. Whose files do you access? The offender's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The mother's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? Her babies. Whose bed do you use? My niece's bed. Whose car do you take? My husband's car. Whose car do you drive? The pilot's car. Whose car do you wash? My kid's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Paul's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? My husband's contract. Whose email do you receive? My best friend's email. Whose file do you access? My idol's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The church's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? Their babies. Whose bed do you use? My cousin's bed. Whose car do you take? My driver's car. Whose car do you drive? The seamstress's car. Whose car do you wash? Mr. Bean's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? And Nanny's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? The architect's contract. Whose email do you receive? The principal's email. Whose file do you access? The goalkeeper's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The policeman's invitations. Whose babies do you take care of? My babies. My neighbor's babies. Whose bed do you use? My aunt's bed. Whose car do you take? The architect's car. Whose car do you drive? The pharmacist's car. Whose car do you wash? My dad's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? My wife's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? The building contract. The building contractor's contract. Whose email do you receive? My customer's email. Whose files do you access? The dancer's files. Whose invitations do you accept? My sister-in-law's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? His friend's babies. Whose bed do you use? My parents' bed. Whose car do you take? My daughter's car. Whose car do you drive? The journalist's car. Whose car do you wash? The CEO's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? My granddaughter's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? The travel agency's contract. Whose email do you receive? A soldier's email. Whose file do you accept? The billionaire's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The cook's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? Miss Kelly's babies. Whose bed do you use? My colleague's bed. Whose car do you take? My secretary's car. Whose car do you drive? The hairdresser's car. Whose car do you wash? My client's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Simon's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? The health insurance company's contract. Whose email do you receive? A sailor's email. Whose files do you access? The mayor's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The priest's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? My sister's babies. Whose bed do you use? My brother's bed. Whose car do you take? The headhunter's car. Whose car do you drive? The interpreter's car. Whose car do you wash? The magician's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Red's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? The singer's contract. Whose email do you receive? The premier's emails. Whose files do you access? The scientist's files. Whose invitations do you accept? The usher's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? The lawyer's babies. Whose bed do you use? My boyfriend's bed. Whose car do you take? My guardian's car. Whose car do you drive? The lawyer's car. Whose car do you wash? the salesman's car? Whose chocolate do you eat? The VIP chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? My school's contract. Whose email do you receive? Ministry of Education's email. Whose file do you access? The architect's files. Whose invitation do you accept? The baker's invitation. Whose babies do you take care of? The florist's babies. Whose bed do you use? My grandma's bed. Whose car do you take? My daughter's car. Whose car do you drive? Mr. David's car. Whose car do you wash? The alchemist's car. Whose chocolate do you eat? Someone's chocolate. Whose contract do you revise? My teacher's contract. Whose email do you receive? The partner's email. Whose files do you access? The candidate's files. Whose invitations do you accept? The bride's invitation.